The Citadel Code, the philosophy of the medieval knight and noble. Chapter 3. Loyalty, the chain that binds. Loyalty formed the iron chain that bound the medieval knight and noble to his lord, his comrades, and the feudal order that sustained the realm. In an age of shifting alliances, constant warfare, and fragile political structures, loyalty was far more than polite allegiance. It was the glue holding society together. Betrayal constituted spiritual treason, a sin that could stain a bloodline for generations and invite divine judgment as well as earthly ruin. For the knight standing watch on the citadel's battlements or kneeling in its chapel, loyalty was not an abstract ideal, but a daily lived reality that demanded sacrifice, discipline, and unyielding resolve. The foundation of this loyalty lay in the solemn ceremony of homage and the oath of fealty. A knight seeking to enter or affirm service would appear before his lord bareheaded and unarmed, a sign of complete submission. He knelt, clasped his hands as in prayer, and extended them to the Lord, who enclosed them in his own. In this posture of total vulnerability, the knight swore his oath, to be faithful, to serve in valor, to defend the Lord's honor and lands against all enemies, and to observe his homage completely, in good faith and without deceit. The oath was often sworn upon holy relics or the Gospels, making it a sacred bond before God as well as men. The Lord, in turn, accepted the homage and granted protection and land in exchange. This mutual exchange created a personal, sacred contract that elevated loyalty beyond mere employment to a profound moral and spiritual duty. Inside the citadel, loyalty manifested in countless practical acts of service. The knight trained squires with patience and rigor, passing on not only martial skills, but the understanding that their future oaths would bind them as tightly as his own. He stood long watches on cold towers, scanning the horizon for threats to his lord's domain. He offered honest counsel in the great hall, even when it risked displeasure, because true loyalty included speaking truth for the good of the whole. He maintained weapons, horses, and stores, ensuring the garrison remained ready. These routine duties reinforced the chain. Every repaired wall, every drilled formation, and every shared meal strengthened the collective fidelity that made the citadel a fortress in more than stone alone. Feudal hierarchy mirrored divine order in the knight's mind. God ruled the heavens. Kings ruled by divine right. Lords governed their domains under the king, and knights executed justice and defense on the ground. Each rank had its appointed role. When every level fulfilled its duty faithfully, the realm endured storms of invasion, rebellion, and famine. Disruption at any link, whether a knight's disloyalty or a lord's injustice, threatened the entire structure. The knight understood this interconnectedness deeply. His personal ambition had to yield before sworn duty, for only through collective fidelity could order survive the tempests of war and intrigue. Loyalty proved its worth most dramatically in battle. When enemy forces advanced, loyalty transformed scattered individuals into an unbreakable line. Comrades fought shoulder to shoulder, trusting that none would flee or break formation. The knight charged not for personal glory but because retreat would betray his lord and the men beside him. In the press of combat, this bond turned fear into resolve. Even when wounded or outnumbered, loyalty kept men standing where self-preservation might have prompted flight. Historical accounts from the period show how such cohesion often decided the outcome when discipline held against superior numbers or surprise attacks. The reciprocal nature of loyalty gave the system strength. The knight expected justice and protection from his lord in return for his service. A lord who failed to shield his vassals or reward faithful service risked losing their allegiance. In practice, this reciprocity encouraged responsible lordship while binding knights to honorable conduct. Protection flowed downward as well. The knight extended defense to the peasants and villagers under his lord's banner, seeing their safety as part of his sworn duty. In this way, loyalty created a web of mutual obligation that stabilized feudal society. Nowhere was the cost and glory of loyalty more evident than in the life of William Marshal, widely regarded as one of the greatest knights of the Middle Ages. Marshal served 5 English kings, Henry the young king, Henry II, Richard I, John, and Henry III, with remarkable consistency across turbulent decades. When Henry II faced rebellion from his own sons, including the future Richard the Lionheart, Marshal remained loyal to the aging king until the end. In one famous incident during the conflict, Marshal even unhorsed Richard in battle, but spared his life, refusing to kill an unarmed opponent. Richard later forgave him and valued Marshal's steadfastness more highly than those who had switched sides. Marshal continued this pattern under Richard, governing England faithfully while the king crusaded in the Holy Land. Even during the difficult reign of King John and the baronial conflicts leading to Magna Carta, Marshal stayed loyal, ultimately serving as regent for the young Henry III. His life demonstrated that true loyalty navigated complex politics without descending into blind obedience or easy betrayal. It required wisdom, courage, and an unshakable commitment to sworn oaths. Literary traditions reinforced these ideals. In the Song of Roland, one of the most influential chansons de geste, Roland embodies fierce loyalty to Charlemagne. Despite overwhelming odds at Roncevaux Pass, Roland and his companions refused to call for aid out of pride at first, but their ultimate sacrifice stems from unwavering devotion to lord and comrades. The friendship between Roland and Oliver highlights another facet, loyalty among peers, where companions fought, argued, and forgave one another yet never abandoned the cause. Such tales, recited in Citadel halls during feasts, inspired knights to emulate these virtues and reminded them of the eternal shame awaiting those who broke faith. During sieges, loyalty faced its sternest test. When an enemy army encircled the citadel, cutting off supplies and bombarding the walls, fear and despair could easily take root. Yet loyalty transformed these trials into moments of collective resolve. Knights rationed food, repaired breaches under fire, and led sorties to disrupt besiegers. They comforted the civilians sheltering inside and maintained discipline among the garrison. The knowledge that abandonment meant betraying lord, comrades, and the sacred oath sustained them through hunger, disease, and exhaustion. Successful defense often hinged more on this unbreakable spirit than on superior numbers or fortifications alone. Loyalty extended beyond the grave in the knight's worldview. A knight who died faithfully in service earned honor for his lineage and prayers for his soul. Conversely, betrayal brought lasting infamy. Families of traitors could face confiscation of lands, loss of titles, and social ostracism. This long-term consequence reinforced the gravity of the oath. Young squires raised in the citadel absorbed these lessons daily, watching how senior knights balanced personal interests against sworn duty. They learned that loyalty was not weakness, but the highest form of strength, the strength that held civilization together when chaos threatened. In times of peace, loyalty expressed itself through diligent governance and counsel. The knight advised his lord honestly on matters of justice, estate management, and defense. He ensured taxes were collected fairly and that the weak received protection. These quieter duties were no less important than battlefield heroics. They maintained the order that made warfare less frequent and less destructive. Ultimately, loyalty stood as the central chain in the chivalric code. Without it, courage became mere bravado, honor an empty boast, and piety a private comfort disconnected from communal responsibility. The knight inside the stone citadel understood that his armored strength gained true purpose only when placed in faithful service. Through loyalty, personal ambition submitted to a greater good, individual warriors formed cohesive forces, and the feudal realm endured across generations of war and uncertainty. This virtue, sworn upon relics and lived in daily obedience, transformed the potentially chaotic world of armed nobles into a structured society capable of defending faith, land, and the innocent. The chain that bound the knight to his lord also bound him to something higher, the divine order reflected in earthly ranks. In fulfilling his oaths with steadfast heart, the knight and noble not only secured his own soul, but contributed to the stability of the realm under God. In the torchlit halls and wind-swept battlements of the citadel, loyalty remained the quiet, unyielding force that made all other virtues possible.